Hello, I am Pascal Neveu from INRAE, and my presentation is about FEAS. And FEAS is an implementation of FAIR principle for plant phenotyping. Expensive and require a lot of resources and often very hard and very laborious. And it is, in most of the cases, impossible to reproduce this, and that produce a lot of huge and complex data sets. And today, in science, we have a strong needs of transparency and reproducibility. And analysis and new analysis is impossible without very rich metadata. And the challenge for us is make data available. Make data available is three dimensions. The first, it must be knowledge discovery, also to provide decision support and new services. I must precise how complex the complexity of the data set. First, we describe a large number of genotypes. Second things, we observe at different scale, from genome to organ, plant, field, and land. Also, we have different interaction at the different levels. Also, at the one levels, we have interaction at one level and between levels. And a lot of interaction to characterize. Also, we must manage different crops, different stage, and also the transformation could be relevant. For example, if we want to discover the link between the management in the field and to, for example, aromas in the wine, we must have the connection between the different stages of the transformations. Also, the data are produced in very various contexts. The context could be omics platforms, greenhouse platforms, field platforms, and also farm platforms. And also the complexity of the data is that the data is from different teams. And all of that make a very, very strong challenge of data management. But we often do mistake. For example, different kind of mistakes. The first one could be metadata or in file names. It's very not good practice because it is not standardized, very often not machine readable, and reduce metadata quantity and the quality of the metadata. And it's often to use with machine. Variable naming is also another problem. We must take care. Sometimes we have the same name for the several variables, such as on the picture on the right. And also we have not well defined variable or no ID, no schema for the variables. Another mistake we do is data are stored on personal computer. That's very hard to find again. Unstable file, if we have files that make always different, it's very hard to combine and to reorganize and to integrate and to combine information of unstable files. Ambiguous ID also. We can have different ID, same ID for different things. As for example, we have not the same, the plot 560 is not the same in 2016 and 2017. The context, the default are not described in data set, and we have no data links. Missing data representation could change. It's very hard, and also often we don't have license on data set. Our objective is to work on to improve this aspect, and that is why we are in the. We want to provide a software environment, an information system that allows to implement the FAIR principle. FAIR principle is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data. For the first one, the things that could be the topic very not so easy. It's PID. PID is the persistent ID, and also we have a challenge about coordinated and sustainable data service in order to find data. Also accessible. We have often problems of not technical one, but license right. And also the challenge is cultural evolution of teams. Interoperable is 3 levels of interoperability. The first one is technologic, it's not so easy, syntax and semantic. And harder for us is semantic, because we need standardized formats, vocabularies, and formal language for knowledge representation of the concept that we use for experimental data. The challenge is skill development in interdisciplinarity, and also in the way of to describe and to use metadata and ontologies. I will explain later. And reusable, one thing not very hard is the provenance. Provenance is the origin and the description of the transformation of the data. Origin and the transformation. It's traceability of the data. And relevant metadata for understanding, not inside only one community, but between disciplines. It's very, very, very hard. And of course, if we want to reuse data, we need new analysis method, new way to combine, new way to extract informations, because it is not, it is heterogeneous data. But the question is how to structure data, and for that, we need a new generation of information system. The data structuring, I will give you some information about the structuring of the data, enables a computer system to perform, store, retrieve, process, and implement good practice. And in order to make fair data, to have flexible system, because the research of today is not the research of tomorrow, and also to provide the ability to understand and reproduce data processing, and also the ability to enforce data management plan and open science. The structuring of data is based on 2 elements. First one is identification and naming convention. The object, plant, plots, experiment, must be formalized. And to have also IDs, persistent IDs, unambiguous name, resolvable information. We can get, for example, if we have the name, a variable ID, we must be able to access to the descriptions on the web and to have resolvable information, and also globally unique ID. That is the first part of the structuring of the data, but the second is the semantic and tagging. It's based on ontology set that provide controlled vocabulary, formalized relationships between entities, and also the capacity on data annotation and enrichment. And also to provide something that could be search engine friendly. We develop, in my team, we develop OpenSilex. OpenSilex is an open source software that provides methods and tools and components to implement information system for experimental data in agriculture and environmental. Information system is organized and structured people, data, methods, software, and hardware. And FIS is an implementation of an information system based on OpenSilex. And now I will present FIS. The data structuring in FIS is based on 4 ideas. FIS is an information system for phenomics based on OpenSilex, and it is ontology-driven system. The first idea is all scientific objects scientific object could be plant, plot organ, plot, etc., leaves, are formalized with ontologies and are identified by URI, because URI are standardized, unambiguous, and shared. Events, it's a second concept. All events could be management, fault, meteo, for such as floods, etc., are also formalized and identified by URI. And the variables, the document, the observation, the software, all of that are associated with this object and event, and also are identified by URI. And the semantic we use, the link between the object, the link between object and event, the link between events are done with controlled vocabulary, with controlled semantic, based on reference ontology, vocabularies, thesaurus, taxonomies, and application ontologies. I will explain more about it. First, in FIS, the identification is based on URI. That is standardized and easy way, because it is easy to integrate in web application. It is unambiguous, it is actionable, we can say also resolvable and dereferenceable. That means that if you have the URI, you can transform the URI on website. And we can access to information for a plant, for example, or plot, or jump blast, or what you want. And also, you have persistent services in order to make URI persistent. URI are generated by tools under the responsibility of the scientific coordinator of the experiment. In FIS, we have URI for plant, URI for pot, URI for cabin, URI for camera, for images, for many things. And also, because URI could be a little bit long, we use QR code in order to collect together the URI. Another way to explain about URI is to say that URL identify what exists on the web, URI identify on the web what exists, and I or I identify on the web in any language what exists. And we use URI. That means that we can put URI on the leaf, on the stem, on what you want. All objects that we need to describe, and we need to aggregate metadata in order to provide context descriptions. Now I will explain how ontology works, and in order to provide the meaning of the data and to provide links between each data element to a controlled shared vocabulary and machine readable. The idea is to structure data in a graph. If I have some element like that with no links, it's very hard to understand what it is exactly. But if we provide some with controlled vocabulary links between the different elements, we can understand that plot is a specialization, a subclass of cultivated land. We can understand that Mogio5 is a plot. We can understand that S2351 is inside the plot, and the 2351 is maize. And that gives us information by making links with the ontologies. And we can also precise the different concepts that we use. For example, here the concept of plot is could be more described with some comment, etc., and could be shared with with the communities. In FIS, we use two sets of ontologies. First one is the reference ontologies that allow to precise the meaning of the concept. It's more vertical. It's specialization. It's kind of taxonomy. We specialize the concept. For example, it's a more relation of specialization and part of, and very vertical structuration. For example, we can say that maize is a subclass of plant. We can say that wheat is another subclasses of plant, etc. And also after we have different varieties and things like that. Could be very vertical specialization. But after we need application ontologies that make links, horizontal links. For example, I want to make a link between a camera and a plant, and I say that I use this camera to observe this plant. That is more horizontal, it's more dependent on my application. And also we need to have application ontology matching, because we use a set of ontologies, and we must also often to do ontology matching. And that ontology set drives the information system, and allow to each team to have a specific description of the concept. The semantic use and the ontology use provide also the ability to the system to use this description of events and to make annotations on the plant. For example, in the field we have a problem with a storm, and we can say that we have a problem on the plot 97. And also we have a problem in greenhouse, and we can explain what this is a problem with a specific semantic that allow to find it with by queries, and to allow to use it in machine readable process. Here I will explain the idea of ontologies with a very small set of concepts. I have only 4 concepts. The first one is plant, the second one is plot, and the third one is site, and the fourth one is plant organ. I can say that site is something, plot another, and plot and plant another thing, but I can say that plant organ is part of plant. We can give some semantic relation between plant organ and plant. And also I can have some properties on the, for example, for the plot I can give the sowing date. That is the ontology part. That is a model, the representation, in order to organize the data. Now I can, one specific team, more a specific plant organ, they can use a new concept, for example, the concept of leaf, such as leaf is a subclass of plant organ. It's a specialization of plant organ. Fruits could be another plant organ. And it is easy to add some concept and some type of scientific object for the team. They can use it, and that allows the system to be to evolve with the science, with the research questions. And after I can add some data. For example, I have some leaves, and I put leaf to 22.1 and 222, such as leaf, and the system automatically know that if it is leaf, it is also plant organs, and the red links are inferred by the system automatically. We have also the plant 12 is within the plot 51, in the site of Mogyo, but if we search the plant 12, by transitivity, we can know that it is inside the site of Mogyo. Okay, and we have we organize all the data in a semantic graph that allow to have reasoning possibility. It is very relevant if you want also improve the data quality and to be able to find the different type of data, and also to if you can very easy way to add some new organs and new things, new knowledge in the graph. What about variable naming? What we recommend in FEAS is to use URI for unambiguous name. Actionable URI for an accessible description of variable. Description can be read also by machine but also by human. And reuse existing variable if available. And to share variables is very important. And that is why you need to have a standardized representation of your variable. Use standardized and shared representation schema for formalization, the formalization of the new variable. For example, for the variable plant 8, I will provide the method with the link as methods, for example, ruler, and the plant 8 as entities that observe the entity plant, and the unit could be also precise in the graph. That allow to have a pattern that allow to represent a variable. Of course, you can have also a part for commands and things like that to explain and to add document. The description of the system now could be the architecture of the OpenSelects and FEAS, and we have the low level is infrastructure levels that allow to be installed of, for example, on distributed system that, for example, could be provided by European grid infrastructure. It's a kind of cloud computing services. Also, we have a second layer that is data layer. It's based on two technologies. The first one is a NoSQL database, and the second one is based on the semantic web triple store services. The first one is for the NoSQL database. Currently, we use MongoDB because MongoDB allows to manage a lot of very large data set. For example, from sensor data and description of the GEMPLAS layer, etc. It's very, 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 very efficient for large data set, and all the meaning, all the structuration of the data are in the triple store with the tools that we use now. It's the RDR4G. RDR4G, all the graph representation and semantic and reasoning, provide reasoning. But that's two technologies could be too hard for users, and is not good. We will provide a semantic service based on a web service that implement some standards such as the breeding API, and we have this service in order to add data or to update data, to access to data, and to enrich data, etc. And it could be done by software agent or by a web user interface. And also we have a calculation and computations could be have a transversal layers that are also to use tools such R, Galaxy, Python script, and etc. that could be accessed directly to the data. Here we have some, you can see some new FEAS user interface. First one is the FEAS user interface for the management of the project management, experiment management, facility management, scientific object management, GEMPLAS management, experimental factor, data visualization, data provenance, etc. I can show the next slide, for example, the specific interface for define variables. You can precise the entity, the quality, the trait, the method that you use, the unit, the name of the variables, alternative names of the variables, the data type, for example, to say that it is a numeric, string, or things like that. You can define also the time interval for some variables, such as, for example, if you have an integration each hour or each day of each week, etc. How you build the variable, and also the sample intervals could be on space, for example, for each plot that could be for meters square, unit, etc. And the description, and also you can add documents in order to describe your variable. And we have also tools in order to make links with different ontologies that allow to specify your vocabulary for the description of the variable, and also to improve the interoperability of the system. Here we have, you can see that some microplot that, and you can see that if you select a specific one here, for example, we select a specific, we can get the computational values of specific trace. And if if I click on different points, I can get the relative images. And here we can also visualize the images. Here it is hemispheric images, and we have the link between and we can have also the software information about the transformation, but we have the link from the origin of the raw data to the elaborated data, and that allows to a better understanding of the process of the calculation, and also you have a visualization of the kinetics and things like that by click. Okay. In short, OpenFIS allows management of huge and complex data, enable and facilitate cloud computing. That is also distributed computing, distributed storage and backup. We implement our current implementation is based on hierarchy system for file system. Semantic management is also provided with ontologies, standardized vocabulary. Flexible design is very easy to add some specific concept and for new scientific objects. We use open technologies. We provide the provenance and reproducibility of data processing. Currently, we have over 10 instances of FIS on various installations. It could be on fields, and it could be also on greenhouse. And we manage on a specific instance close to 1 petabyte of data with over 20 plant species. And also, OpenSilex is not used only for plant phenotyping, it's also used for water ecosystem with Sonagri for the management of solar panel on the 16 for other domain of science. It is an open software, and we can provide some support and the development with the MISTI team. Conclusions that if we want to go to FAIR, it's not only for machine. What we notice that most of the times teams and communities work together in order to have a better formalization of the concept and a better formalization of data, and that is very, very great to go to FAIR data. Complex data must be structured in order to make it fair. It's very important to precise variables, vocabulary, concept, link between things. Very important. And we also need, because it is integrated data set, new data analytics and artificial intelligence process able to address volume and heterogeneity issue. And of course, if you want to use FIS, you need training and some support, of course. Thank you for your attention. Now, just for finish, I can add some information if you are interested by FIS demonstrations and also papers and more documentation.